We have an elected threshold of approximately 20 students. One of the hardest part of this process has been the number of full-time equivalents that won't be returning back to our schools. Anytime you lose 15 and a half staff members, that's 15 and a half staff members that impact students. We really struggle with that because we know behind every great opportunity and activity is a caring Fairport educator. Through attrition, that means we will not be filling positions, again, using our class sizes, looking at our class size decrease, particularly in grades 6 through 12, and looking at each one of our positions throughout our organization, 12 and a half of those 15 and a half will not be filled. At the elementary level, that is a net reduction of 2.0 after the attrition. The secondary, there's a even wash. There will not be any reduction, any reduction at the secondary level. Clerical, there will not be a net reduction after attrition. Unfortunately, district office, that's my cabinet, there'll be a 1.0 full-time equivalent in the Office of Curriculum and Instruction that unfortunately will not be back next year in that capacity as a result of position analysis, and we'll be looking at using our current administrative staff to distribute some of the responsibilities of that office to continue the work moving forward. Another major component of each one of these line items of our program, administrative, and capital budget lines are the New York State Retirement System, the contributions for 2020 and 2021. The employer contribution rate is estimated to remain at an average contribution rate of 14.6%. The teacher retirement system is going to be between a contribution rate of 8.86% and 9.53%, and that's on percentages of salaries. Right? And we know that the ERS and the TRS systems are linked to stock market performance. If you look at it throughout the years, there's volatility in these numbers, but we feel like we have a good hold on them as we're moving forward in the short term, but we can expect those rates to change. Also in each one of these program lines are the costs of health insurance and other unemployment insurance and disability insurance and dental and so on and so forth. So I'm going to be reviewing each one of those categories right now, starting with the program budget. You'll see an overall increase of 2.25%. And those are the budget lines that we've been talking about. These are not a surprise. I'm not going to go through them like I've done in the past. But our program budget is everything curriculum and instruction. It's the costs associated with the instruction of our students, our incredible programming, electives, all the support services and programming, and of course transporting over 5,600 students to public and private and parochial schools. It's 76% or 75.98% of our budget, and it's a significant component. And if you take a look at the work that occurred the last several weeks in the general instruction, when you're looking at those full-time equivalents, you'll see the 0.86% increase when that number was higher early on in our budget process. But again, the overall increase there are going to round out to be 2.25%. Our administrative budget, that includes the costs associated with the administration of the district, that has a superintendent's office, the office of business, our human resources, and curriculum and instruction. That overall budget line, and again, you'll see from the instructional administrative support, that also includes our directors, but also where that position analysis occurred, unfortunately, of a minus 1.29% decrease in that line item. For an overall increase in our administrative line of 2.7% of an increase. And this administrative budget accounts for 11% of our budget. It did it again. I wonder why it's doing that. Sorry. The final component is our capital budget. Capital budget are the costs associated with the operating and maintaining of our facilities. It's our bus purchases. You'll see that approximately our buses are on a 10-year replacement cycle. We are going to be recommending 11 replacements. That would include 5 71-passenger buses, 5 28-passenger buses, and 1 65-passenger bus. We will be trading in 13 and only looking to replace 11. Again, that was a budget recommendation from our budget or our audit finance committee, and you'll see that reflected here in this budget. There'll be a debt service and capital outlay project that will be outlined in this particular line item. And the total capital, when it's all said and done, is an increase of 1.8% increase. When we started this in March, there was a $4 million increase, or a $136 million budget. We are coming to you with a $135 million budget, or a 2.2% increase versus a 3% budget-to-budget increase. And again, that was from the work that was occurred to look at our expenditures carefully, engage in position analysis, and to really carefully look at our declining enrollment and manage our class sizes in a way that got that number down from 136 million to 135 million in general. With that, I'm going to transition to Mr. Stevens, and he's going to talk a little bit about the revenue pieces.
Okay, thank you, and good evening. So this pie chart here shows an overall summary of our total revenues as a district, and you can see here primarily the two main pieces of the pie where the majority of our revenue comes from would be our property tax and pilot agreements, which are payments in lieu of taxes, and state aid. So between the two of those, it's a little over approximately 90% of the entire revenue side of the budget. Then you can see sales tax makes up a portion. Some other revenues, such as refund of prior year expenses, some facility use fees, building use and rentals through BOCEs. And then we have our Medicaid federal funds, our assigned fund balance, which is money left over from the 2019-20 budget that the district is looking to allocate to help offset any tax increase in 2020-21, as well as the general fund reserves. As Mr. Provenzano talked about, the reserves, we took a look at those and analyzed and looking to appropriate additional reserves to next year's budget. And then the transfer to the debt service fund is simply utilizing monies in our debt service fund to help pay the local share of debt, which again also keeps the property tax levy increase a little bit lower. And here's a quick summary of the...
Hold on a second, we have a question. I apologize, Matt. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I did. Sorry. Relative to, so this page, for those who are watching, the state aid, the 42 million, this is the one we'll be watching, right? The look back period from July 1st through December will impact that area. Obviously, we won't know until that look back period's over. Is that right? And the projection right now is 20%, but it's not 20% of the 42 million, it's 20% of the foundation portion, right?
24.
Which is what,
Correct.
28 million or
24
million?
Yep.
Mostly not a question, but a clarification for, because I see we have a number of people watching.
So 20% of 42 would be the wrong number. It's 20%
right.
of 24,
20.
which leaves us to be somewhere in the range of $4.5 to $5 million of 20%.
Yeah, again, it's just to jump in, the 20% estimate is based off of the foundation aid as a whole, which the foundation aid is the 23.7 million we'll see on the next slide.
And the sales tax has been, we budgeted downward because we know that will come in lower as well, though, already.
Correct. Yes, we have adjusted the sales tax down based on projections in terms of the economy and what we'd anticipate coming in from the county for the sales tax. So that has been adjusted down. So we anticipate losing anywhere from $1 million to $1.4 million in revenue there for next year. So here's the The state aid pieces, as mentioned, foundation aid, that is where the district is, we're projecting and estimating that there could be a potential take back based on the governor's look back periods. So we may or may not receive the full $23.7 million in aid next year, but that's something we're keeping an eye on. The governor also adjusted school districts down by a pandemic adjustment, which you see here is a negative 622,000, which is offset by some federal CARES restoration money to districts in the same dollar amount. So a net zero at the end of the day there on that piece. And the other three pieces of aid categories would be our categorical aids or expense-driven aids. So those are based off of expenses in the prior year, so that being 2019-20, that drives 2020-21 aid. The main piece of increase between the transportation, BOCES, and building aid is primarily building aid and transportation based on cost, but also something we're keeping an eye on related to any expenses such as contract transportation that we may not be paying out in 2019-20. Excess cost aids would be our aids on students with special needs, there'll be private placements and educating students within district, anticipated to stay fairly stable. And then our aidable materials, which is our software, library materials, hardware, and textbook aid, coupled with tuition aid and urban suburban aid. So that's projected to be relatively stable, a small decrease related to categorical aids for the library material, hardware, software, and textbook because it's enrollment driven. So overall, 1.87% increase on our state aid and primarily related to the expense-based aids. So I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. This gives a quick recap as we talk about the property tax levy limit, known as 2% or rate of inflation, whichever is less. However, due to exclusions, the number can be higher than 2% or also even lower than 2%, depending on any capital exclusions or pension system exclusions that are eligible for the year. So the next slide shows our calculation. You can see at the bottom, after our eligible exclusions, which would be the local share of any debt payments and capital payments, such as the local share of bus costs, we do get transportation aid on bus purchases. Overall nets at a 2.13% tax levy increase for 2020-21. So here are all the revenues put together. So again, the property tax levy being the largest piece of the revenue side. You can see here's a 2.13% increase. Sales tax, you can see budgetarily adjusted down. Historically, the district had been receiving a little excess in budget. However, given the circumstances and projections, it's been adjusted down by 11%. Fortunately, it didn't have to be decreased and have a full budgetary decrease of 1.4. However, there'll still be a loss of revenue there. And state aid is up 1.9%. And then we'll talk about the assigned appropriated fund balance and assigned reserves. You can see large increases in those two pieces because the district is looking to assign additional fund balance of $323,000 to help out the revenue shortage, as well as an additional $1 million in assigned reserves coming from our employee retirement system and teacher retirement system reserves the district has established.
Mr. Stevens, can you go back and just focus on the highlighted state aid revenue? I think this is what Mr. Forsgren was talking about. The $42 million is our total state aid, but of the foundation aid, that's where the governor could come back and as he has done in previous years, when we were in the middle of the Great Recession, we've heard of the gap elimination where up to 26% of the foundation aid was taken at mid-year or adjusted, and that really, again, is what we're preparing for.
Correct, yes, yep. So of the 42 million, approximately 23.7 million is related to our foundation aid, and that is, of that 42 million, 23.7 is what we're estimating as a potential take back. That's where the governor has when it's been related to the gap elimination adjustment. It focused on foundation aid for reductions.
And that's for those who are at home listening to the governor. Each each day for the past several weeks, this has been a point that he's emphasized, that the 20% number would be coming from this line item, in addition to the sales tax and other, because, we are on the brink of a recession, and that instability is what's creating the issues in our current budget, which we're trying to plan for, which we're offsetting, which you just explained with the reserves. Thank you.
Correct, thank you.
Well, I suppose the plan for doesn't necessarily represent here. I mean, it's represented in part in terms of our increased use of reserves. Some of it, though, is saying because we're anticipating a mid-year cut, it's some of the additional savings we have here in the latter part of this year that we're holding back in. I don't know what the right word would be, an additional reserves, if you will, additional savings that might be able to fill that gap, whatever it might be.
So the Audit and Finance Committee met, and I think it's a great opportunity. I mean, you're on that committee, and I don't want to speak for you, but the whole idea was for us to try to manage this scenario in its worst possible form. And again, please, that's what we were talking about. Please take a moment to explain that. So,
well, that's the case. So the reality is, right, in terms of this current fiscal year, and again, Tim and Kevin, you're on that committee as well, so jump in if you like, but to recognize we're going to have some natural savings. We are not buying diesel fuel. Our utilities, as we comment every time Brett and I are in this room, are lower, right, because we're keeping the temperature quite low in our building, so it's cold in here. Those natural savings are things we're trying to put to the side in ways that say, when we find out at that look-back period come December, we're able to continue on with our operations such that we're not making mid-year cuts. So the budget looks balanced because we are saying here's what state aid's been promised, it's been passed in law, but passed in law also is a look-back period which could cut that 42 million down to 38, and we are doing our best to manage our current situation so we can plug that gap should it occur.
right, and that's an intentional action, and that's why you see that 15.5, that's why you see that position analysis, that's why you see that we are not going to be investing this summer in installing a new multi-purpose field. We're going to continue to roll that into the capital improvement project, the 2019 voter approved capital improvement project. But that's also why you won't see this summer roadways or sidewalks or classrooms being reimagined. It's because of that very intentional move of using those dollars to be placed into reserves to manage a fiscal reality that's upon us.
Intentional to manage an unknown, right?
Hey, Brett.
Hi,
Peter. Good evening. Just a couple of quick anecdotal comments. One is that my professional career, we work with a lot of state, local governments. Everybody's facing this similar circumstance, right? So the budget constraints and concerns that we have around the look-back periods are being faced by every county, city government, all higher ed in the SUNY system. So everybody's adjusting to what this budget cycle is going to look like, and it's really going to be very, it could be dire in a lot of cases in terms of being able to provide public services. So I really think that the programmatic way that we put this budget together and looking ahead, being conservative and put this together is going to pay dividends for us down the road because we do have protection and visibility. And I just think about where we started this 2 or 3 months ago, where we were talking about how we're going to invest money and invest in programs and certain facilities, activities, and then also put money into reserves to continue to build up those reserves for future projects. All that's been scrapped, right? And so we're not investing anymore. We're holding that money back to protect us on the downside against these unanticipated or unknowable actions that could take place, very will take place in the future. And we're also not putting it into our savings account, right? So if you think about very pragmatically as your home, you're taking your money and you're saying, I'm not going to be investing that in my savings. I'm not going to be investing that money. I need that money to pay the bills. I need that money to pay the mortgage and keep the lights turned on. And we'll survive. That's what we're doing. But we've shifted from an investment savings mode to really more of a, protect the program, protect our staff and our children.
And I know that many people understand the economic forecasts, and I won't continue to develop those, but we are on the cusp of some really dramatic economic times. The recession, we couldn't predict 2 or 3 months ago. However, with COVID and the health issues that it brought about, there's an economic piece with this pause. And that's the one piece that, made this another, or added another layer to our process. And that's what we're trying to shift. We have to be responsible and responsive so we can continue to try and position our students and our community in the best possible light. And I think that's what we have here in this budget.
Great, thanks.
Sorry, Matt.
No, that's perfect. Good stuff. The next piece here is a breakdown of our fund balance and reserve usage that was used to balance the budget. Here you can see again the increase of the assigned appropriated fund balance, transfer from our debt service fund, which we have planned $400,000 a year. 1920 simply is higher because there was a premium received on a bond anticipation note, so it sits within the debt service fund until the premium comes due, the interest payment comes due in a year. So that amount was $104,280. Then we have a transfer from our tax cert budgeted reserve that would be related to any tax refunds, and then unemployment reserve for unemployment insurance paid out. And then here is the bigger piece related to our retirement contribution reserve, which is the employee retirement system, and then the sub-fund that we were able to establish last year for the teacher retirement system, increasing that by $1 million and assigning that at the reserve usage and the budget side, on the revenue side of the budget. So overall, you can see it went from $5.7 million up to $6.9 million in reserves, about $1.4 million in total.
I think we were talking about the COVID savings, and I know that people are aware, and we've been saying that there would be a COVID savings. Always to go into the reserves or to offset PPE or the new normal that we're living in with the transition, Matt. I mean, I think that's, another component of, we need the savings, we need to position it in these reserves so we can offset the unknown costs of the eventual transition back.
Yeah, that's correct. There will be some expenses that historically we haven't had to budget for or pay for. Then any savings now will help us to try to make the purchase, like you mentioned, with the PPE, our transition planning, and so forth as it relates to the COVID-19. So this next slide just shows, the total budget on top. You can see $135 million. So we take a look at our true revenues, meaning the state aid, the tax levy, any of our building use and sales tax, that's $128.2 million. Then our transfer from that debt service fund, here's where you start seeing us offset the revenue side of the budget by our debt service fund, as well as the assigned appropriated fund balance and reserves of $6.56 million for a total revenue fund balance to match the expense side of the budget, $135 million. As a percent of budget, our total reserve usage is increasing a little bit for 2020-21, and that's primarily related to the additional $1.3 million or so that we are assigning in fund balance and the appropriated fund in the appropriated reserves. One additional piece that's going up for vote is for the district to request usage of our capital technology reserve to help offset expenses related to technology. So we do have a capital tech reserve. This would be a proposition on the ballot. We've been easing off of the use of this reserve. Last year we asked for $464,000, and 2020-21 that amount's dropping to $309,000 to eventually ease off the reliance on such reserve.
So one of the components of our transition plan will be this concept of online learning. How do we continue to allocate our resources to support that? We know that we need to continue to refine our process and build upon our actual resources or the actual devices themselves, so we can continue. We have over 900 devices out right now. I'm sure we could continue to loan those out at great amounts as well. So, you could see that's what that may be allocated to.
Yeah, and I think important to add here too that this 309,000 is appropriated and adjusted budget to the general fund, and then that is used to make a purchase through BOCES, which in turn drives BOCES aid.
Matt, can you just address, I know that we are taking some money from reserves that we as a board can do, and then this particular is a reserve that needs voter approval. Can you just address the difference between some of the reserves, why some need a voter approval and some not?
Yeah, so per general municipal law, there are some reserves that may be are operating reserves. So in essence, the four main operating reserves that districts can utilize to offset operating expenses, general operating expenses, would be the retirement contribution reserve, tax certiorari, unemployment insurance, and workers' comp reserve. And then you have capital reserves, which have to be established by voters, the actual reserve, with a fund, with a term and a fund up to amount. And this tech reserve happens to be one of the capital reserves, voter approved to establish and then voter approved to spend the money out of the reserve.
Thank you. For the benefit of some viewers who might not understand the difference.
Yep. Good
And Brett, going forward, as we all know, September will probably look different than we've ever had in any public school setting in the past decades. It's important if you could just address how we're starting to plan for that and how this budget will continue to fund that.
We're starting transition teams. Last week, I was on Facebook Live to address the thought exchange, which there was an incredible amount of feedback from our families and students, and we also did a thought exchange with our staff, and we're starting to take the information and use that information to inform our transition planning. And our transition planning falls into site management. Basically, what is our school day going to look like? How are we going to follow the guidance and the best practices relative to transitioning safely and effectively? We'll be partnering with Monroe County Department of Health. The CDC has extensive guidelines. We will need to manage the social emotional well-being of our students intentionally. We need to make sure that we're supporting curriculum and curriculum management. Students haven't been in a formal classroom setting. If we can get them back in school, when we get them back in school, what are the gaps and how do we make sure that we're meeting those needs, and if necessary, adjust our curriculum maps. And that is happening right now. We have multiple different teams inside the district. We're using our lead teachers, our instructional coaches to inform the process along with our administrative team in those areas. We have over 30 mental health professionals and counselors working on the mental health component of it. Lots of unknowns, lots of questions. As we move along, we'll have certainty in those domains. But we have an advisory board that includes an FEA, or Fairport Education Association rep, 2 Board of Education members, Joyce Kostick and Tim Sliz, Matt Stevens, Assistant Superintendent for Business, Doug Loff, our Assistant Superintendent for HR.
Hey, Brett. Brett, are we getting any guidance from SED or the Federal Department of Education about how this is going to look like? I mean, I understand we're doing lots of great work in Fairport, but I mean, I would hate to think that every district in New York State is going to do this differently, and that there isn't some sort of common foundation or expectations or guidance coming to all of us of what we need to look at.
We've used our resources to communicate with Monroe County Department of Health. Our superintendents of Monroe County have been really working to make sure that we're cohesive. We'll be following the experts, and they'll be giving us guidance and clarity as we move along. The CDC has had multiple documents come out, and they keep refining those documents. We need to get guidance from the state or from our local health department to understand what will be our parameters as we move forward. And probably thinking around June, we'll have more clarity, early June. But in the meantime, we have multiple teams developing multiple different scenarios. So when they come forth and say, okay, we will be coming back partially in the summer. What does that look like? Or we won't be coming back in the summer. We will need to come back in the fall. What does that look like? And under these circumstances, we will be coming back. Or maybe it's a hybrid of both. So right now, we're doing our research. We're looking at the CDC expectations and guidance, and we're developing multiple different scenarios, and all that will be vetted through. I've said the transition accountability team will be reporting to, I'm sure, this group as well to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But there will be a succinct plan. We won't be making this up as we go along. We'll be following what the experts say. We'll be driven by facts and data that they're sharing with us, and then creating a plan that's good for our community. And again, we have the thought exchanges that are out there. We'll continue to bring those dialogues coming forth, continue to work with those pieces of information to continue to meet and address the needs of our community with our eventual transition.
Brett, I think it's important also that we as a board have agreed on those class sizes, as you showed us in the previous slide. But also that if the CDC says, this is the maximum number of kids in class, obviously we're going to follow that. So just so for those parents who are watching, just because we said that we're going to go up to 20 in a kindergarten first classroom doesn't mean we are going to if CDC or Monroe County Health says no.
Our schools are not socially distance friendly. You take a look at our cafeterias, our hallways, our buses, some of our ensembles, our playing fields. There's lots of guidance that we're waiting upon, and we have been talking about it as a county. We will continue to talk about just to try to find those consistent threads, and then being able to apply what we're learning to what our community expects. So yeah, it will be different. And I don't know the busing circumstances. There's many different plans out there. Our transportation department is looking at multiple scenarios as we speak too.
And we're also hiring bus drivers too, correct?
We are aggressively hiring bus drivers. Please stay tuned on our website, on our social media. If you are interested, we'll definitely welcome, and hopefully we can have more bus drivers in Fairport.
Thank you.
Another piece of this, and I'm going to let Mr. Stevens explain the slide, but it's incumbent upon us to create a budget process in a way that we've never done before. And there's going to be multiple mailings. We'll be having a budget through absentee ballots, and we'll be walking through that process right now. There'll be 3 mailings that will be occurring in the next several weeks, and Mr. Stevens is going to take some time to talk a little bit about that so the community can have awareness on what to expect, on how we will be voting, and how you can get your vote counted for this budget process.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a little bit different this year based on governor's orders in terms of traditional school budget vote that takes place usually at Joanna Perrin. This year, as Mr. Provenzano mentioned, is to be done all by absentee ballot. So the first mailing that's going out, you can see here, is simply a postcard, and that's a required postcard that we have to mail out that just provides the vote and board elections information. So that postcard is in progress. Will be mailed out in the very near future as we send it off to printers. The second mailing would entail the absentee ballots themselves. So the district would be looking to mail 2 per household with a return, a postage page returned envelope. So with 2, you can see here in detail underneath the first bullet with the second mailing. With 2 absentee ballots to be mailed out, there'd be 2 voter absentee ballot envelopes as well that need to be filled out in full. And I'll just kind of pop it up to the screen for some of those that can see it a little bit here. Here's a sample of that envelope. So that would have instructions on it in terms of how to complete it. And it's important that only 1 ballot goes into each of those voter envelopes. And then those 2 envelopes, if there are 2 voters in the household, those 2 envelopes can then go inside the 1 return postage paid envelope that's being sent out as well. So again, there'll be information and details when the mailing comes out that has all the information in terms of with the absentee ballot and the envelopes to be completed. But we thought it'd be prudent just to explain it, since it will look a little bit different from an entire absentee ballot voting process. And then with two going out per household, if there are any additional voters in the household, additional absentee ballots may be requested. You can see the information here that they can contact our Deputy District Clerk, Taylor Buffa, at the email address below. This information also will be sent out with our mailings as well. So any additional household members that are qualified voters can request additional ballots. So it's not limited to 2 per household. If there happen to be 3 or 4 voters per household, they may request more. And then the third mailing is the commentator, which will come after our public hearing, which is May 26th, I believe. The next slide. So those are the 3 different mailings that we have. Again, it's different this year due to the circumstances in terms of how the vote needs to be conducted. It's also important that the absentee ballots and this information will be, I believe, on the postcard and with the ballot itself, but the absentee ballots must be returned to the district by 5 p.m. On June 9th, which is the vote day. So it must be received by the district by 5 p.m.
And again, we'll continue to communicate this process. This is completely different. This is part of the governor's executive order, and we're obliging that executive order and making sure that we're following the process to a T. And we're looking forward
I have a question on the ballots. What do people do with unused ballots? If there's just one voter in the house, do they destroy it? Do they mail it back? What do they do with an unused?
Typically, I might have to ask Taylor or get back to you on this one, but because this is new this year in terms of sending them out, usually we get the ballots back because
it was requested.
Right.
These are requested, so.
Because a ballot has to come back in a sealed envelope to count, if we didn't receive it back, it just wouldn't be counted as a vote. So I would not anticipate they'd be sent back.
Okay, so they
we'll confirm that piece. I don't think they're required to, but again, this is new. This is a different way of having to do the budget vote. So we'll just make sure that we've got that base covered as well. And to add, you see the second mailing anticipated last 2 weeks of May. As you can see, there'll be 2 ballot envelopes, a return envelope, and then there's an outer envelope that all this is going into. So the quantity of conducting the vote this way, the district will have to work with printing houses and so forth to get these envelopes printed and ready to go. So because it's being sent out essentially to all households, similar to what the commentator would, quite a few additional envelopes that the district has to order, stuff, print, send out.
And we're also competing against other districts, Monroe County 1 and Monroe County 2. Not competing, but they're going to be doing the same from a volume-wise, especially our local Monroe County 1 districts.
Yes, absolutely.
And with this manual process, how long do you think it'll take to get the results back after the vote? I mean, it won't be that night for sure. So how, is it 2 days, 3 days, or a week?
We're trying. Go for it.
Let me jump in here. It truly depends on how many ballots come back. You're trying to see if there's any type of way to do a method of scanning, but as of right now, been unsuccessful. Most districts, as we look at this, will most likely be counting these manually. So it could take some time to count.
And we will be using our approved list of vote personnel to do the counting.
As of right now, yes.
Because any employee of the district is not allowed to do such.
I thought
I would say they're not allowed. As of right now, we have the inspectors that we're approving and hoping can count.
Anybody that comes forth will be approved through the board via resolution as well. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt, another question that I've heard is whether there'll be a drop box at district office or a designated location, or whether they must be mailed. I think people
We're
are
looking at that.
worried.
So as of right now, we just have a small little mailbox outside district office. That's another piece we're looking at is can we do a drop box?
So it might happen.
Correct. Yeah. I would anticipate it do it. We just have to look to see what would be the most secure drop
A
box.
secure Dropbox, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
So the last slide, the 26th will be the virtual public hearing at 6 PM. We'll be communicating those details in the very near future. On June 9th, the budget vote and board elections will occur via absentee ballot only. Okay. Absentee ballots will be mailed 2 per household. I'm repeating myself, or I'm repeating Mr. Stevens. Ballots for additional household members who are qualified voters can be requested by contacting our Deputy District Clerk, Taylor Buffa. Her email and contact information is on the screen and on our website, and it'll also be in all of our communications. Absentee ballots must be received by 5 PM on June 9th, 2020.
Should we review who is qualified to vote in this election? What is the criteria?
That information is going out in the postcard.
Awesome.
Just don't have it right in front of me.
It was on the website. I had it posted on the website. My computer's down with the specifics, but, Mr. Stevens, do you wanna?
Yeah, I'll pull it out. Hang on one second. Okay, so to run for the Board of Education, again, this is on our website. Potential candidate must be a citizen of the United States, a resident of the district for 1 year preceding the vote, at least 18 years of age, able to read and write, may not have been removed from any school district office within the preceding year, and may not reside with another member of the same school board as a member of the same family, may not be a current employee of the district, and may not simultaneously hold another incompatible public office.
That's for the board, but how about for the?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
The voters.
yeah.
Sorry, I had that one on my mind. Believe, let me see, I'll pull the postcard out.
18 years of age.
18, yeah, it's 18 or over, and there are a couple other pieces.
Yeah.
I believe it's 30-day residency.
Sorry, man, I can't help you. My resource is down.
Nope, that is okay.
We will make sure that that's posted, again, on our social media, on our website. It's there right now.
So it's 18 years of age, a United States citizen, and a resident of the district for at least 30 days preceding the vote. So just those 3 pieces.
Okay.
So if you have an 18-year-old in the household, or you've been in the district for more than 30 days, right, and a citizen, you are allowed to vote. Correct, Matt?
Correct. Yep, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
What I'm hearing though is that we have a lot of Fairport graduates that are home from college right now. They are eligible to vote.
As long as they're 18 years old, yes.
Okay.
And again, very specifically, there's a process. If there's more absentee ballots that you need in a household, that will be mailed home and clearly articulated on what steps you need to take to get more ballots so you can exercise your voice.
Great.
So we have 4 action items remaining on the agenda, all related to the budget and the time frame that we have between now and June 9th. So before moving into that, though, are there any other questions around the budget itself? Revenues, expenditures?
This has been a very interesting procedure. It started back in January, February, when we started looking at things, and March hit and turned everything on a dime, and I applaud Matt, you, and Brett, and your team for really taking the high road on this and not looking at all the negatives that could come of this, but how can we make this work? And I applaud you all for the work that you've done, because this has not been an easy time to do this, nor has it been an easy budget to work with. And it hasn't been easy for a lot of other people either, who unfortunately will not be coming back to Fairport in the fall.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
likewise, I appreciate the board's ideas and vision, making sure that we had clear parameters, and that made the work, albeit challenging, but manageable, and we were able to put a process behind it in such a short while. So thank you to the entire board.
But it does go beyond that. If I could slightly amend what you said, Tim, we had administrators looking at master schedules and others even before the turn of this year, right? So back in November, December, all for the purposes of the budget, to inform the budget process, looking at areas where we, needed to change or be able to not just find efficiencies, but service the students better. A lot of work went into it, and considerable amount also had to be set aside. So it's not that we will forget those recommendations. For the time being, though, we needed to focus on maintenance of our quality of our programs and not be able to quite focus on the enhancement of them.
So there's going to be a couple-year period here that we're managing our way through it, and I think if we continue to communicate, set the right parameters, and manage our fiscals, we can manage our way through this. I'm hopeful.
Yes, I'm hopeful too. It's unfortunate, but I think, having tackled it as quickly as we were able, once the information was there, to say, okay, we're going to manage what we can and plan for the unknowns as well, right? As much as that sounds like an oxymoron, right? We are doing our best to recognize there's considerable unknowns out there, and creating opportunities for us to manage those as they hit us in the future. So with that, didn't hear any other questions. Moving on to the part of the budget, the first one in 3A is to adopt this budget. So motion to adopt or approve the budget that we will present to the voters.
So moved, Tim.
Tim, second.
Second.
Damon, I'm not sure if anybody's on mute. You may want to mute yourself so I can be heard. Any comments or questions before taking the vote about this? Anything further? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that's 7-0. Moves us on to the property tax report card. It is in the public section for anybody who may be following along our agenda. They can take a look at that, but we need to approve the property tax report card, which will be submitted upon approval. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Marty, was that you?
It was.
Okay, Marty, and Tim, was that you on a second?
Second, yes.
Okay, and any questions about the property tax report card or comments? Very good, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. We'll move on to C, approval of the capital technology proposition to voters. This is the $309,000 that Mr. Stevens had talked about. So a motion to approve this.
So
So moved.
Was that Judy? And second, sorry,
Marty?
Marty, second. Thank you. Any questions about that? Standard language for us for the past few years. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing, seeing none, 7-0 to D. And this is approval of the notice of annual meeting, budget vote, all the scheduling that Mr. Provenzano, Mr. Stevens went through just recently. So a motion to approve that and get our notices out.
Joyce.
Who was that? Sorry.
Joyce.
Joyce, thank you. Second? Don't
Second.
Tim, don't all fight here. Okay, second. Questions, comments? No, sorry. All of her, no, what do I say? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. And finally, appointment of vote personnel. This was a question earlier, so I'll get a motion to approve because I did have a question on this. Motion to approve the list of voter personnel.
Marty?
Judy?
First, Judy, second. my question was, we have done this, these are all new names, because we had approved voter personnel before, and I'm just clarifying that these are new to us.
These should be the same names, but the last approval actually said may vote. So within our recommended action, it said for the budget vote on May 19th.
Okay, so this is specific, now we're moving it to June 9th.
Yes.
Very good. Not additional personnel. Okay, but these are the people we're counting on to count the votes then at this point?
At this point, yes.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. Okay, if there's any last comments, we are going to have an executive session, so I'll get a motion for that shortly, but give anybody else an opportunity for any final comments or anything? Very good, then I will make a motion to move into executive session at 6:07. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Tim. Any questions, concerns?
Yeah, do we have a separate link for that?
Invite forthcoming, once I manage my technical difficulties.
Get that sent out real soon. And for anybody who may be watching, we will not be making any decisions afterwards, so we will reconvene into public session, but then we will immediately adjourn, so nothing to wait online for. Thank you for participation. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? 7-0, we will move into executive session. Thank you, see you all on the other link.
All right.
I will just need 2 minutes because I'm changing location, but I will be there.
Yeah. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
And for all. Okay.
So we had it like 45 to 49 at best, settled in right around 33.
Yeah. Are we out of Facebook Live?
Yep, just ended.
That's the wrong one, Tony. Mine's like a little pin head. It's a little pin.
Do you have a little bitty?
Yeah, do you have those around by any? Do you have one?
I have the square ones.
I need this one right here, like that one.
Oh, did your battery die?
Yeah. Can you believe, like, I had it plugged in, but I guess I didn't.
You can log in through here.
Can I do a Zoom here? Can I log in here?
Yeah, here, this one.
That one works too? Yeah.
I'm gonna run down to the bathroom if that's okay.
Of course it's okay. Hey, you know what, would I be able to, so I'll log in, so I'll just keep this up here. And I'll just log out here, and then I'll log on mine. Will I be able to do a Zoom call and all that? Yeah. So if I log out here like this, restart?
Log out. You can just log out. Click here. Then sign out.
Hey, Bob, what's up?